Hello, and I think we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Nitish. I'm a partner with Everest Group. I have the privilege of leading our work around marketing and experience globally, along with the leadership role in our AI practice. I guess all of us have to be AI analysts and advisors now, so we can't escape it. I have with me two very incredible guests to talk about agentic commerce. And so, Prachi and Megan, thank you for making the time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, as I said, we want to talk about agentic commerce and how that's changing the rules for customer engagement. If you think about the last 20 years, most of us have spent that in optimizing for a human clicking. Search rankings, product pages, cart flows, checkout friction. The whole discipline assumes a person is looking at a screen. We published a view around that in terms of intelligent commerce last year, which seems not just last year, but a decade ago now. We have to assume that it's not just a human anymore. We have to assume that the buyer is an agent as well. It might never see your homepage. It doesn't potentially care about your brand film. And it compares you against four competitors in that 1.2 seconds that it takes, or at least it took this morning. And that is the premise of agentic commerce. And that's the subject that I want to dig deeper into with Megan and Prachi over the next 45 odd minutes. If you've attended any of our LinkedIn lives before, we want to keep this interactive as much as we like the sound of our own voices. We don't want to be in an echo chamber. So we will encourage questions. And let me just set it up in terms of how we see the world. If you think about the term agentic commerce, it's getting stretched quite a bit. Let's start by talking about what it is not. This is not AI search. This is not GEO. It's not a chatbot on your product page. Those are all assistive technologies. Agentic commerce, in our view, is when the agent moves from helping the customer decide to actually doing it or deciding, including transacting and handling what comes after. And that's a fundamentally different thing. And it breaks current set of assumptions. So that's the premise with which I want to have this dialogue. Let me introduce the two people we have today and might see this from opposite ends, and I hope we will converge. Megan is a co-founder and CMO at Alentor. She's built and marketed commerce platforms for years. I let her do her introduction, but I'm really happy that she's here today. But Megan, over to you for a quick intro.
Thank you, Nitish. Very excited to be here. So yes, Megan Stabler with Lenta. We are actually a contextual AI pricing governance platform for retailers to help protect margins in this autonomous buying world. So excited to be here and sort of spread and share the news on this AI world that we're living in, but the autonomous world of buying, which is scary for retailers today.
Absolutely. I should make a note, and maybe this is more of a disclosure requirement. I've known Megan for years, and I'm glad you could make the time today. So I do appreciate that. And then Prachi, Prachi is a part of our marketing and experience team. She leads our digital commerce and MarTech research. So Prachi, over to you for a quick intro.
Thank you, Nitish. Super excited to be here today. As I'm a part of the marketing and interactive experience team over here at Everest Group, and I look at various different areas when it comes to the marketing function. One of which, a very fundamental area, is digital commerce. And I know we have called it digital commerce since ages, but can we even move forward with the word agentic without the commerce part of it? So I'm here to discuss that today, as Nitish mentioned, what it's not, and figure out where we go from here. So I'm really excited for this discussion.
Perfect. Absolutely. So why don't we dig in? I think it's an exciting topic. There's a bunch of things that's happening. But before we do that, one thing for everyone watching, listening to this, in the comments right now, I'd like you to chime in or answer two things. What's the what's the last thing that you would happily let an AI agent buy for you without checking? What's the thing you don't want to check? You let them do it. And then if you flip it, what's the one thing you would never delegate? I really am looking forward to those answers. Like, be specific, and we'll read some of those out live, and also what it tells about the disconnect that's potentially there when it comes to agentic commerce. I don't know, Megan, Prachi, we haven't prepped for it. I don't know what your answers are. I think the one thing I let them buy for me are groceries. I think those are things I'm happy to delegate. I have a set of brands, rules, and that's all right. What's the one thing I would never let them buy or delegate? I think I'm still finicky when it comes to travel. I want to know what I'm doing. I hope we get there, but that's something I'm still wary of. I don't know what those lists for you look like.
I was going to say travel too is a concern for me. I think we've all tried to see, because there's been a lot on LinkedIn and X and other platforms of people saying, try this hack, use these keywords to go reduce your travel spend. I tried it, didn't work for me. So travel is the least thing, especially when I'm pretty aligned to my flights, my routes, and my airlines. I think another concern I would have is, you talked about grocery, right? And so I'd be concerned if you said, hey, agent, I'm going to give you $150, right? I'm back in the US right now, a week to go buy my groceries. And then 1 week, the agent then attempts to purchase a premium $400 espresso machine because it noticed that you mentioned wanting to have better coffee. So I think the guidelines that we have to apply to it are still humanistic at the end of the day, right? We don't want the transaction to go buy things with outside of the guardrail. So yes to groceries, no to travel, but be cautious on anything you're purchasing online.
I think
Absolutely.
I completely resonate that. Like, if you would ask me, I think I would have said groceries as well. But Megan's answer really surprised me, and probably I don't want that $400 coffee machine. But at the same point of time, I would not let it make decisions for me in terms of financial instruments. If there's any policies that I need to buy, I need to do my own research and not let it make those transactions on my behalf at any point of time.
True.
No, I think those are really interesting perspectives. Perfect. Now with that out of the way, and I'm keeping a keen look at the chat in terms of what people comment. I'd love to see what the sentiment on this is. But let's move forward and really dig into the topic, as I said. So first, I wanted to just start by establishing how much of this is real in terms of agentic commerce, and how much of this is our echo chamber where we're all just talking about it. So Megan, I'm going to start with you. What has changed in your opinion in terms of the technology landscape that makes agentic commerce more real today than earlier AI commerce waves? We had voice, we had chatbots, we
Yep.
had conversational commerce. I don't want to date myself. Why do you think this is different, if this is different at all?
Well, we did have those, right? I mean, we've all tried conversational commerce, right? We all have our Alexas sitting around. We probably put our shopping list into Alexa and then just given up on it. It's the same thing with the Meta glasses and things and the Ray-Bans that we had, right? It seemed gimmicky. Probably not going to use it that often, but I do believe that right now in this instance of where we are in architecture, technology, and the abundance to think about AI, that we're living through the death of the internet's middle layer itself, right? We're moving out of the era of sort of search and scroll, and we're now into this sort of era of ask and done. We're getting the bots, the AI bots, the autonomous bots to do the things for us. And I did a quick chat with one of our partners at Shop Talk, and I said that humans are just lazy people. And it's true. And so if we can provide or use a system to do things for us persistently and consistently, we're probably going to keep doing that. And that's why I think AI in commerce is going to be and is the right thing, right? I think it's 88% of executives have actively expanded their AI budgets, right? But there's probably a much lower percentage, maybe 6%, that are actually achieving a fully scaled, mature framework. And a lot of those are just marketers trying to reduce their personnel count, the MarTech that count itself, and putting AI in to go do things for them. But AI is going to change fundamentally what my 14-year-old daughter does online and buys online and shops online, and maybe gives them more freedom, but probably less control.
I think that's a great way to put it. I also like the way you framed architecture. I think it's causing a fundamental shift of our thinking around martech, adtech, everything in between. We've lived in a tech sprawl era for a long time, and we still do. How do we use it maybe to disrupt some of that? I think that's a really interesting tension. So Prachi, let me bring you in. We work a lot with CMOs, and from a CMO standpoint, why should agentic commerce matter now? Scale adoption we know is still emerging. So is this a 2026 issue? Is it a 2028 problem? How do you think about that?
No, I think Scale adoption is definitely still an issue, but like there are a lot of questions about, is it very futuristic? I would say early, but not exactly futuristic. And for me, the biggest reason CMOs should care is that agentic commerce could actually at this point change who, as well as what influences your buyer decision. As we talked about until now, brands have designed journeys for people. You attract a customer through various different channels such as search, social media, etc. You bring them to your website, you compare options and convert them. But at this point of time, intent is the thing that really matters. And it may be an agent who will be interpreting the customer's intent. So, what I believe is that an agent effectively becomes an intermediary at this point of time within the brand and the customer. So, it's really important for a CMO to ensure that the agent understands and probably recommends their brand, and not just so that they go back and look through the Google search only. So we have some stats up on the screen as well right now of the kind of adoption that we are seeing and some predictions that we have made. We also see that a lot of retailers and enterprises at this point of time are experimenting with it. However, we do understand that the scaled adoption is still a very far way to go. But if I just talk about my example, we talked about travel, right? And travel is one of the things we would not delegate to an AI agent, but at the same point of time, the research, the evaluation, the comparison. If I have to go to a vacation next week, I will ask an AI agent to do that for me.
Mhm.
And if a brand, if a hotel doesn't show up on my list, I think that's really an important place. Discoverability is in the now and not in the future. And that's what makes it really important for CMOs at this point of time to act on it, to build a roadmap for scaled adoption. And we truly understand that it's not a overnight journey, but it's like a ladder which will go on in the coming years. So definitely, Nitish, I would say it's a 2026 problem to begin with. And as we scale it, there's no end to it.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because in some way, what I'm taking away is the direction is clear. I think we're seeing enough signals around that. The timing of when you do it is potentially not. In some ways, that's the best and the worst position to be in as a CMO because you have to, in some ways, spend before you can prove it. Megan, you're selling into enterprise retail right now
Yeah.
in a bunch of these areas.
Yeah.
And you sit in front of a retailer, which arguably is a very difficult market right now, but also a high degree of consumer AI adoption. Is agentic commerce or offshoots of that, are they on the real agenda and budgets, or do you still see them as a slide in the innovation deck, perhaps?
Well, I'm going to have to answer that, Natish. It depends. The answer is yes and no. Everybody's experimenting. I talked about the MarTech stack, right? All of the existing tools that people have used in marketing to attract, retain, grow, drive customers, right, are changing for AI. But if you think about it just from a pure, and I think, appreciate you talked about it. How am I attracting people to my site, right? It's about the data, right? Because I think the storefront is going to be dead in a few years' time, right? You're now giving up control of discoverability to an autonomous bot with some sort of guidelines that you've enabled it to have to go search and find something, and maybe purchase that thing for you. So the threat of brand hollowing, right? Losing your brand identity when you can't control how that's going to be searched for and used and discovered, losing that loss of channel control, right, is going to be there, because when engagement happens entirely inside of that AI interface, brands are going to risk losing that direct session tracking, the page views, the page metrics, the page tracks, the ability then to re-influence buying decisions with this. We all I think about it this way. When you go to a website and you see something, you have an emotional reaction to it because it looks pretty, it looks nice, and you go, I have to have one of these things. Now you're giving up all of that to a bot and just saying, go find me the best tracksuit in blue that has something that is in my size. And it's going to come back to you with an assortment of options and prices, unless you give it more things. So, CMOs are going to really risk becoming hollow utilities if they fail to own this back-end data sharing. And that's why the protocols matter. That's why whether you're using a UCP or ACP, you're building out your LLMs, you've got to have enough rich content inside of it. And even when you've got all of that, if you're not thinking about managing, if you're a retailer, I know we talked about flights, but let's take it down to clothing manufacturers, right? If you're not thinking about every SKU that you have as an autonomous micro business where the product evaluation journey itself will require every individual SKU to be managed as its own commercial unit with full contextual awareness of its cost structures, real-time inventory pressure, channel exposure, then you're going to be losing out. And it could be a race to the bottom on price. So AI used by CMOs is a good thing to drive efficiency and process and scalability. But you have to start with the elements of data layer and how you're going to use it, how you're exposing yourself, how you're going to find you through the LLMs, and you're going to be exposing your data and your structures. Obviously, my background is I came from big commerce that have rebranded as commerce. That is a shameless plug. That's why the Feedonomics tool is so good over there, because it is going to be enriching the data and the descriptions. And again, that's why we at Atlanta are doing it from a pricing perspective, because now you have to have it within sight of guardrails. I need to know that the price I'm offering up to an autonomous agent is not going to mess me up in the future because it's a race to the bottom on the lowest price wins. It shouldn't be the lowest price wins. It should be the most effective optimized price wins for the channel that I'm selling through based off of the SKU level autonomous micro business that I've defined. So there's a lot more to think, which is what I'm trying to expose here, than just saying AI is the solution for the future. So it is about thinking about how I'm effectively going to use AI, not just in how I market, but also how I manage my infrastructure, my business, so that I am competitive, because if I'm not doing it, I guarantee that my competitor is probably looking at it today. And ultimately, the worst thing is you, me, Natish, as a consumer, we're going to be looking for agents to go do the buying for us anyway and give us the best price for the goods that we want.
Yeah, I think that's a great framing. The storefront is dead, folks. You heard it here first, and I think that's a good segue to create that urgency. But on a more serious note, let's talk about the journey collapse. If you look at the traditional customer funnel to zero UI, frictionless journeys, and I know we are simplifying this for brevity. 40 minutes of decision making becomes 90 seconds, and that's why anybody who owns a marketing budget needs to worry about. And Megan, you mentioned this as well. I'll come back to you again on this, which is specifically around what parts or which parts of the customer journey do you think are likely to change more drastically? So where does this actually start first?
Well, I think the fastest one that is changing is the returns, right? That's something that you can take care of today. We all know that traditional commerce has been about attracting you, converting you through the checkout, maybe upselling you on a few more items, and then shipping it to you. So shipping is the first thing that's really been involved with AI and doing a lot of good work over there. Shipper HQ and some of the others after ship are doing some really good work. But the returns business as well, right? That's where I get let down when I buy something, but I need to return it. Those are all quick wins in my mind as to how you can go ahead and use AI. The changing customer journey, it is just what we did with digital transformation when we've thought about everything in the past around the customer journey. I hope that retailers and others are really looking at not just this autonomous reverse logistics I just mentioned, but they're looking at the whole discoverability dashboard. They're looking at how this customer journey changes from the impulse to buy now is officially endangered, right? That moment of seeing something and going, oh, I need that, right? Agents don't care about the beautiful lifestyle photography and creative layouts or emotional design tricks that you've put together. They care about cold, hard, machine-readable metadata. So the data, again, I think I've said it a few times, is where you actually have to start on this. And then what are you going to do with it and enhance it through the entire journey? And ultimately, how are you going to protect your price within that margin guardrail to make sure that, you know what, I'm not going to compete on this channel for this SKU right now because it doesn't make sense for me. I'm going to invest over here. But there's just so much change that is going to happen because of AI that people have to think about when it comes to these AI agents acting as the delegated buyers.
That's a great framing, and I will extend that a little bit. And Prachi, bring you in. If you take Megan's point around the collapse of the journey, but also where they start, I think returns is a great example. What categories are best suited for agentic buying? We're seeing a difference, as you know, between grocery and replenishment versus maybe fashion, travel, insurance, some of the B2B areas. So which industries are early on the journey? Are we seeing some archetypes perhaps?
Oh, definitely. So while we are in a lot of conversations with enterprises about agentic AI, and you, Nitish, know that we analysts love our acronyms. So there's this acronym that we use around, which is called FLY, and which is basically the three criterias. First is the purchase very frequent? Second, is it low risk? And third, do you understand your customers' preferences? So, first, as we discussed, groceries is perhaps the most easiest category where we are seeing a lot of traction in this area. Groceries, household equipments, which are actually a very repeat purchases. Customers have an idea of which brands they are going to buy, and they probably give a range of the amount, like not exceeding $150, let's say, for the week that they want to have. The decision criteria there is clear. The downside of making a mistake is kind of limited when you have the right guardrails in place. And the underlying data, the point of data that we are talking about, is much more structured. So that's like a simple example for me. Subscriptions are another strong category. So an agent can identify services which are currently not being used according to my data and move me to a better plan if there exists any. Travel, I believe, is a little bit more interesting. And I think we need to separate assistance from delegation over here. I know none of us would want to delegate the job of booking a flight through a agent. However, what I believe is that it will develop in a lot of layers. So consumers may initially delegate tasks such as comparing these flights, monitoring prices, or rebooking hotels, etc. But they will be less comfortable allowing an agent to actually plan things. What I find actually a little bit interesting is an industry of fashion and apparel and beauty and personal care. So, if a customer has established preferences, repeat purchases, clear constraints, the way that we talk about in our framework, then there's a very easy win for that as well. Fashion is a little bit more nuanced because it depends a lot of on the personal taste as well. Higher value, higher risk categories are likely to move a bit more slowly as we see adoption. So, as I talked about financial products, I would not want an agent to help me with that. Healthcare decisions, probably luxury goods. And in this case, what I believe is that the line that we draw is not just simply between sectors, but it's more about where there are a lot of routine, a lot of frequent purchases, a lot of low risk items where the investment is not that high. And it's a fairly preference based routine job where it can be first implemented as it moves through the cycle of the layers of delegation to assistance as we go forward from it.
Can I just say, I agree. I mean, there are certain things and elements that you talked about there that we don't make a lot of repeat purchases on, right? I know in the chat there's somebody talking about televisions and stuff, and you mentioned TVs, right, and stuff like that. We probably make a television purchase once every X number of years because we want to increase the size or there's some other feature that's come out of it. The groceries is that research, right? The combining of, hey, I just saw a wonderful recipe, now go buy me the stuff and deliver it, right? I can probably automate that and use AI to go find it and put it in the cart and bring it and have it delivered for me. The fashion stuff is a little bit more difficult in my mind because you're now dealing with that unforgiving nature of AI data consumption, right? Where we as humans are very flexible, right? A shopper that is human can tolerate missing attributes or look at that messy PDF or PDP on side of the website and say, you know what, we figure out what the product detail is and I'm going to go purchase that. But as I mentioned before, AI agents are entirely unforgiving, right? And so if product data is inconsistent, if it's mismatched, if it's dumped into plain text descriptions or lacks the right metadata, right, the agent's simply going to skip that product entirely. And remember, I think, Tish, you said it, you said it's purchasing in a few seconds. I think it's nanoseconds that these bots, AI bots are going to be out there. So my urgency in the way that I talk about it is a CMO or a chief digital officer or anybody inside of a retailer has to fundamentally get their data and their pricing correct for all of the things that they're wanting to sell, and then think about the channels they're going to be selling through, and then think about how the AI autonomous bot's going to be calling on them. Are they building out their MCP to allow somebody or an animal agent to come get it? And so the requirement on high transaction goods, fashion, grocery, those types of things, I think is a little bit more than televisions. That is, 55-inch, 75-inch, L, whatever it is, doing these things, or brands. And so this is the challenge that any retailer is going to have on this changing customer journey, because that impulse to buy is officially in danger, as I mentioned before. And when the point of discovery and the point of sale collapse into a single conversational line, retailers risk becoming nothing more than a hollow fulfillment utility at the end of the day.
I think that's a really important framing. As you said, reflecting on the chat, I know people spoke about TVs. To your point around the hollowing out of that maybe landscape, people are talking about maybe it's the demise of intermediaries such as Target, Walmart, etc. What does that do to the whole value chain? Again, it goes back to our point around challenging some fundamental assumptions.
Yep.
I want to pop up one of the questions that has come in, and I'm loving some of the chatter. The comments are coming in thick and fast. This is really helpful. And Anil's question is really interesting, which is, I think central idea is, should marketing teams now add an AI agent as an explicit persona in their brand and product strategy? Not the shopper, but the agent acting on behalf of the shopper. And is that a 2026 priority? Should it be a 2027 roadmap? How would we think about it? So Megan, I don't know if you have a quick view, and Prachi, feel free to add to it. But I think the question is really an interesting tension.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what I talked about when I gave the consumer example, right? Of viewing a recipe, clicking a button, and the AI agent then is automatically populating a basket across maybe multiple groceries or grocers to find things, optimizing for what's on sale, completing that automated checkout loop, and then securely purchasing things in the background, making sure I'm going to get everything delivered within X amount of hours, right? Is that a 2026 or a 2027? You know what? I think we've been doing that for a few years anyway on integrations out to Instacart and other things. So that's probably now I'm thinking about it's probably a bad example of what you're asking there. I think it's just going to go back to it depends. There is no one singular answer as to what needs to be the priority for 26 versus 27. I think it depends on you and your business and what you want to do and where you want to be at the end of the day. So Anil, I wish I could give you that this is how to be predictive in this AI world. It just depends on your market, your segment, and your business, right? But at the end of the day, I'm going to say it probably a fourth time. It comes down to your data. I've got to keep saying it. Data is king. That's it.
Yeah.
I think I echo Megan's thoughts over here. Sorry, Nitish, but I think I completely echo Megan's thoughts over here that there is no one right answer or not a one true answer. But at the same point of time, what we have been hearing enterprises do as a first step at the 2026 priority is getting the data sorted, getting their marketing metrics in line, the KPIs that you measure it with, and having a fundamental that what are the quick wins and what are the quick intent-based questions that AI agents can help shoppers with. So a lot of times we see that just for the sake of using a newer technology, we are going into headfirst diving into a newer priority without understanding that it is mostly about the intent that we are looking at customers. And since we talked, it's different for different industries, different for different businesses. So finding that 3 or 4 short areas where you can run pilots and have a priority for 2026 in terms of the buyer persona that you build for an AI and optimize for generative engines. I think that can be one of the ways I see it.
And Nitish, I did reread the question, right? How do we message in a way that the agent finds it credible and relevant so that they will qualify that on behalf of the shopper? Again, it comes down to your data. It comes down to all those attributes and descriptions that you're placing inside of it, which there there are other marketing solutions that can help you do that. I'm plugging a former company, but that's the value of data enrichment, right? That's what you've got to think about. There are, in the fashion world, there are other companies that are doing this as well, specifically for fashion, right? You may have, I want to wear a dress after my wedding dress for the evening, but it can't be this, and it's going to be, I got married in the North Yorkshire, so it's fairly cool, right? So it can't be too hot, can't be too cool, I want it to be this and this. It's all these little attributes that you start throwing into the description for the dress itself, that SKU, that allows the agent to find it, but that's only as good as the cue, the command it was given by the human that said, go find me this. I'm going to be getting married in Yorkshire in the evening. Check the weather beforehand. What is it likely going to be? This is my size. What do I need to wear? Give me some recommendations based off of my style and fit. These are all the considerations that fashion retailers are having to think about right now.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point, and again goes back to your point around data. So why don't we get to the point around data? So I think as we get into this third segment, let's talk about trust as the gate, perhaps, to scaling agentic commerce. So Megan, just on the point around infrastructure, what infrastructure do you think is needed for AI agents to transact safely on the behalf of customers? We've spoken about consent, identity, authorization, other elements. Who is building that, and how do you think that will pan out? And then we can use that as a segue to talk about the criticality of data and the burning platform there.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of those that you just talked about, I can dive into, but I want to add another one to that, which is fraud detection as well, right? It is making sure that you as a retailer are truly thinking about not just your C2A, right? Your consumer to agent models and how you're building that out. You're building out your LLMs. You're thinking about your markup data. You're thinking about your LLMs, but you're also thinking about the checkout, like Google's Buy For Me functionality rolling out inside of Gemini and Google Search. You're thinking about security. You're looking at different things from the ranges of data that is your true master data to your dynamic data, the moving parts. Like we do it at Atlanta with something called a profit envelope, where once we've analyzed a retailer's data and a lot of information, a lot of history, we create a profit envelope, which is a sort of JSON file that floats into the different loyalty promo platforms and systems with the guardrails for margin included inside of it. All of that has to be secure. It has to be real time. You've got to have your live, inventory that's included in it, logistics, whatever else, promotional logic is included. So you've got your master data, you've got this dynamic data that changes often, you've got outcome data that you've got to think about, right? Contextual tagging that we've talked about in terms of data, right? That matches that human intent that I gave you examples of before. You've maybe got to think about your organizational data, your corporate DNA, the relevance, your values, because we do have a lot of millennials that are buying based off of your sustainability attributes and what they want to find. You've got to build out maybe your MCP or maybe even your multi-protocol compatibility, right? Because there's multiple protocols out there that you're probably going to have to adhere to. So you've got to think about those things too. But you've also got to think about know your agent, right? Security that ties into it. So traditional e-commerce fraud models rely on that human session behavior to identify what isn't human, and we've got to be wary about. And now your security frameworks must adopt KYA, this know your agent infrastructure, and WebBot authentication, and RFC 9421, I think it is, for cryptological types. There's so much that has to be thought about that does go ahead and change what is needed from that infrastructure for AI agents to truly transact safely. And all of those things are before you even get into what we do with this sort of pricing guardrail to make sure you're not giving away the house. So it's thinking about this governed, machine-readable commercial firewall, for lack of a better description for you, because when you come down to it, if it's time to stop indulging in this experimentation theater just because AI looks cool, right? We talked about that at the beginning. And I know from sitting on a publicly traded board that as a board of director, a non-executive director, we are demanding more rigor, and we must look at transactions and be able to transition from this blind automation to a governed commercial firewall. That's what's going to come down on any executive implementing AI is board oversight, if you're publicly traded especially, and probably if you're privately traded too.
Yeah. And I think that's a critical thing that sometimes is underappreciated in terms of trust and governance. So Prachi, let's flip it to consumer confidence perhaps in this data, right? So how comfortable are consumers based on the signals you're picking up in delegating these purchases? So walk us through the continuum that you've been thinking about there, and what separates maybe a retailer which is trying to do more trust-led orchestration versus one which is just getting to the point of agentic distrust.
Definitely, Nitish. So, what we have been seeing currently, the signals are strong in terms of the kind of adoption that we are seeing, or in terms of the kind of piloting that we are seeing. However, one important thing that we talk to enterprises to keep in mind is that agentic commerce will not just scale because the technology becomes better. It will only scale when the people who are using it trust the agents enough to let them influence or recommend, or even maybe go to the point of delegating or even completing the decisions on their behalf. Where we are right now is in the form of an assistance, where an agent or a like agentic commerce agent can help them, assist them, research them, evaluate them, compare them. However, the payments bit is still a way to go for us, and Megan has talked about the data, about the fraud detection. All of that becomes super important. However, when we talk about the consumer sentiment specifically, there is a real tension over here, because on one hand there is like a positive part. If the agents are designed very well, they can make commerce much easier for a retailer or for anyone who's experimenting with this technology. They can understand what the customer wants, explain trade offs, recommend things, and reduce a lot of friction in the ideal journey. This can lead to a lot of better experiences, much better loyalty, and even better business outcomes. But the risk comes at a point where we see if companies start adding agents everywhere. So, a lot of times, what we see is that a overutilization of the technology just for it to reduce cost or just to automate a lot of more tasks. The experience can be a little bit overwhelming and uncomfortable for customers. It may look efficient, it may move faster because there are a lot of fewer people which are needed in the process. But over time, customers will start asking this question: why is this agent recommending me this product? Where is my data being processed? Is it acting in my interest, or is it actually acting in the interest of the retailer who's recommending these things to me?
Yeah.
And can I talk to a human if something goes wrong? That's the point where it can, the convenience of it all can turn into distrust, where we see the line going down. So the message that I want to leave over here is that more agents do not automatically mean better commerce. Poorly designed agents can create more confusion, lesser personalization, and even a lot of resistance. So the way forward, as we have talked about the guardrails of it, it's not to slow down on the commerce adoption journey, but it's to move with the right guardrails, a lot of more transparency, how the data is being used, when can humans actually step in over here. So anything related to fraud prevention. Um, so yeah, I think trust is not like a soft issue. It's what's gonna decide how we move forward.
If I may I just add to that?
Yeah.
Marketers have spent years with their brand establishing a brand loyalty, right? In this agentic world, we're about to give up the brand loyalty because of a bot is going to be buying on our behalf. Unless we say only buy a Sony, only buy LG, right? If we're saying go find me with a lot of descriptors inside of it, you're being offered up something, and as a human, we may just buy something because it's cheaper on price. It may be buying something because we're familiar with it, but that brand loyalty is ripped apart at that point in time. So that's why it's important to get your data right. However, when you receive the goods that have been purchased, right, and we haven't talked about checkout and Stripe and some of the things that they've built in with their AI, to support these protocols. But when you receive the goods at home, and if it lets you down because it's not what you thought it was going to be, or it didn't turn out to be the size, I call it the Temu problem. I'm not trying to diss on Temu, right? But you order something, a specific thing, and it comes out, it's not exactly what you wanted. You're not going to be upset with the fact that you found it via a Google chatbot. You're going to be upset with the brand because it's the brand that you received it from. So the investment that retailers and others have put into creating that brand loyalty has to be also mapped somehow into how you're dealing with it when it comes to this AI autonomous, because that's the word I keep using, autonomous bot, on knowing who your consumer is that's buying from you at the end of the day. And that's why I said earlier on, we've got to stop indulging in this experimental theater just because AI looks cool. We have to truly think about what the experience is. And Nitish, you started it off very early on about the customer journey, what the true customer journey is going to be in a very agentic, autonomous world where decisions are made in nanoseconds to find and serve up something. The storefront is probably still going to be there. As much as I said the storefront is going to be dead, people are still going to want to see things. And we know from Agentic today that imagery is still being served up through the bots to show you the different things. But all of the visual stuff that was added into the storefront of today needs to come down into this very agentic world. Otherwise, you are going to lose that brand loyalty. And we can't have that, right? It isn't about just buying the best price. It's about buying quality for the right price.
Yeah. And let me pick on the point around loyalty. I think that's again a really interesting point. If you think about loyalty programs, historically they were built on the assumption that a human remembers the experience and comes back because of it, whatever that might be. Whether it's your club card or if you're a fashion retailer, it looks different. But now, if an agent is making those repeat purchases, it does not necessarily feel anything. Tech bros in Silicon Valley might disagree. Maybe we have sentient technology around the corner, but I don't know. So the agent is just optimizing. So I'm wondering, what does loyalty infrastructure look like when the customer you're trying to retain is a machine? Megan, I know it's an early debate, but what do you think about that?
Well, I agree. That's why some of the strongest partnerships that we've built and the integrations from what Alenta does with our contextual AI pricing governance engine are into some of the loyalty programs. Voucherify, for example, launched their Vincent tool backed by Alenta's data, right, which is giving you the quality information on your SKU level margin business. And if you can tie that into your CDP or DXP and you've got the customer information that's tying into, hopefully you can tie in the agentic purchase and you're now knowing who that customer is and you can start doing your retargeting. So loyalty has moved from an afterthought in my mind from we're just going to create loyalty and we're going to have some groups and we're going to give you a 20% discount, the sort of Oprah Winfrey, you get 20% and you get 20% and you get 20% into, you know what, Nitish, you are a very loyal customer of ours. We're going to give you 15% discount on this range of things because we know you very well, even when you're buying through an agentic MCP protocol, whatever it may be. But Prashi, we really don't know you and you have a big propensity to return things. So you buy a lot, but you also return a lot. We're only going to give you a 10% discount on that. And these are all the margin guardrails that we can provide the loyalties. And so I think loyalty becomes a big shining star, just as the CDPs, DXPs do nowadays, about really knowing who your customer is in an agentic world. You've got to figure out who they are, why they're buying from you, so that you can turn them into repeat purchases. But then you've got to be able to take the data back into how you're defining your SKU so that it serves it up again. I mean, this right now is sort of a one-time, I'm searching, buying. I'm searching again, buying. I want to make that repeat purchase if possible without you having to worry about it, but I'm always serving up what I have versus my competitor. And that used to be what Amazon did. But that even changes. And somebody even talked about Walmart. That changes as well.
Yeah, I think that's again, I think it's going to be really interesting, fascinating to see how some of that both healthy tension, but this future infrastructure plays out. Okay, I know we are getting some questions thick and fast. I want to get to some of them. Let's maybe move to our penultimate or closing questions, and then we'll try and do this in a fun way to end this. So we spoke about the premise, we spoke about what's changing, we spoke about the trust as the gate, including data, including infrastructure, and the bottleneck around it. Well, let's talk about what do we actually do about this, right? How do we make this useful? If someone is watching this with a budget and a board meeting next month, what can they do? So let's talk enterprise first. Large enterprise customers are trying to make these decisions in the next 6 to 12 months. Prachi, as you think about their decision making framework to become agent ready or agent native, what are the 2 or 3 things that they should be doing, and what are some things that they should frankly wait upon?
Oh, definitely. I think this is something that I mentioned earlier because the first thing is to avoid starting with the fact that we need an agent. So start with like which customer intent are we trying to actually target over here? Identifying a small number of use cases where delegation can create a lot of more genuine customer value. So finding out these cases for your particular business rather than just going headfirst by saying, oh, we need an agent for everything. That can be the very primary step. The second step that we talked about a lot over this conversation is getting the data foundation right, because agents actually need a lot of accurate, current, machine readable information. So having this data very, very structured in this digital model is the ultimate way to go about this. And I think third, again, we talked about this, is building the trust layer. So having that attributes about how the information is processed, why is it being recommended, providing a lot of transparency on what is happening at the back end, can be a really, really important parameter as enterprises go about thinking about this journey. And finally, what I would say is that enterprises really need new measurement techniques. So what I mean is that Nitish mentions in the starting, how traditional matrices, when we used to look at the traffic, the website clicks, the pay conversions, etc., they will remain relevant, but they needs to be supplemented by how the measurement will change in terms of agent recommendation, the AI generated consideration threads that are going to be there, and the accuracy that we have going forward. Is my brand actually visible to these agents where it should be? So I think these are the four things enterprises do need to look forward to as they build their journey.
Perfect. And Megan, let's switch it to, frankly, the state of retailers, for instance, right now. How far are they? Agent readable products, pricing, policies, availability. We spoke about a few more things, but how far are retailers from this, honestly? And you spoke about the fact that some of this is a data problem and it's really critical. How much of this is a data problem, perhaps even a broader organizational one? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the challenge for retailers is the investment in this, right? In the retail world, when you're talking about 2, 3, 5% growth for a retailer, if that, and a lot of retailers are probably not achieving some of those growths, it's very hard to invest in new technology and start thinking about it, right? As Prashi talked about, this needs a structured approach. I know you talked about structured data. I'd say it's really about contextual data. I'm sure the three of us, if we sat in a room together and looked at a sweatshirt, we'd all have different descriptions as to what that sweatshirt actually is and looks like and feels like and whatever else, right? So it is about the contextual elements into anything that you're trying to describe. So I think for retailers themselves, Nitish, it is about the investment that they're willing to put in. Are we going to see more high street retailers? You're based in London. I spend most of my time in London. We know that the high street retailers in the UK and some in the US, a lot of them are going out of business, have gone out of business. So how much can they spend? For online retailers, it is about adapting. So overcome and adapting into how they think about AI. It is starting small, back to the data. How do we want to describe ourselves? Building out an MCP. Looking at the different protocols that are available. Fraud is going to come along with that anyway. Some of your fraud providers are probably offering some of those solutions, but it is having a strategic look as to what you need to do. And obviously I'm going to pump a lender and say pricing has to be part of that. It is the last corner of digital transformation. It is looking at making sure that your brand is always presented first, and what are we doing at the end of the day to make sure that our brand is promoted and not dissolved in an agentic world. So unfortunately, there is a lot that retailers have to think about and restructure both internally with their MarTech, when we talked about that, think about and restructure with the personnel that they have that are thinking outside of the proverbial box, and also thinking about structurally what do they need to change to continue the business growing in this very highly competitive world that is going to be more competitive because you just have limited control over it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into our maybe penultimate question. I want to have some fun, so maybe I will be controversial for a minute. Just be patient with me. Let's talk about, and I want a straight answer from you both. If you think about agentic commerce now, does it now create a new class of commerce ISVs, or does it just become an embedded feature inside Shopify, Salesforce, Adobe, SAP, what have you? You mentioned this earlier, Megan. How that might evolve. You obviously have a storied background in building some of these companies. So, what do you think? Does this become? Is this a feature or is it a category?
Whew, that is a controversial question. This is going to be a feature. This is going to be a must-have feature that you need to include across your entire portfolio, from tech stack to user journey. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Prachi, what do you
I
think?
think I think I agree with Megan that I mean what we have seen with other systems. I'm just gonna take a look from that where we see other CTPs etc. moving. They initially start as a whole category, but then they're all consolidating into one. So probably there will be a lot more new ISVs coming up, which will look at orchestration and other things. However, at the same point of time, I believe it's truly gonna be a feature at the end of the day, a very important feature.
Oh, this is just you are too unified. I wish there would be some more controversy,
Hey,
but
isn't that called unified commerce or something?
yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so let me move to my final question, and we'll see if there are other questions in the chat. We addressed a few of them through this. Uh, and let's put the buyer back in the room, right? We spoke about the commerce ISV, spoke about what that looks like. Uh, so now think about, if you're a CMO watching this, what's the one thing you would ask them to do differently on Monday? So Prachi, start with you first, and then Megan.
Oh, definitely. I think as a CMO, what they would really need to look at is where their business currently is and what are the use cases that they can actually use at this point of time. I mean, a lot of times CMOs just try to bring in a lot of more newer technology. But I think I've said this time and time again. You really need to evaluate where you are at your journey and actually see which are the low hanging fruits for you, which are the things that fall into our fly framework of frequent, low risk, and knowing your customer preferences. So really look through it and understand how can you actually adopt this going forward and build in the trust in the system.
Yeah, I will echo that and add with my answer being, understand where your customer is today, but ultimately where your customer is going to want to be tomorrow, right? We started this off, Nitish, joking about conversational commerce and a few of the other things. And I said that this is not going to go away like many of those other things. So what are your customer demographics? How do they like to purchase? What are their imperatives, right? And then back that into your marketing program and then your MarTech stack as to how you basically are going to encourage them to buy from you and not from your competitors. So everything that Prashi's talked about, but also think about your customer, think about where they are right now, and then ultimately where they're going to be, and then add that into your plan. Because if you can go capture them in a very finite, smooth way, even if it's an autonomous bot buying, you will keep a repeat customer.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I want to make a quick plug for some of our research. So if you're interested in following some of this right now, what you've seen, uh, there'll be a link shortly where you can go and see our analysis. You can see this QR code up right now. This is where you can talk to our analysts and learn more about agentic commerce and share your questions with them. And then also, there'll be a link shortly where you can learn more about Megan and what the great team at Alantor is up to. And you learn more about what with some of the things that we spoke about today. I'm just taking a quick look if we have any other questions. I think we have addressed a bunch of them already. Now, with this, I want to thank everyone for their time today. My closing remarks are really around the fact that I think the middle of the funnel in some ways is getting repriced. It's not getting removed. So, and the firms, I feel, that treat agentic commerce as a cost play will find out that they train their customers to buy on price alone. And that's a hard thing to unravel or unteach. We have published a bunch of these things on it. You will see it in the QR code, and we're seeing industry moves around it. So we are really interested to see on the ring side how this plays out. So Prachi, Megan, thank you for your time today and your patience with my questions. And we can't wait to have the next conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.